Hey everybody, welcome to Teal Tinted Glasses. Sorry about the delayed start time, but we're here and it's going to be an awesome show because we're me and Jerk. I need to mute myself. Me and Jerk are we're talking today, and we realized that obviously, look at we're Sharks fans, so we're going to talk Sharks, but at the same time, we haven't really talked a lot of other stuff, where we've kind of glossed over other stuff. So today we're going to try and do a deeper dive into the Pacific and see what's going on, because the Pacific's suddenly not so terrible anymore. The Pacific teams own both wild card seeds. Obviously, this can change tomorrow, but there's some interesting stuff going on in the Pacific, so we're going to talk about that too. Laurel wants her money back. Bad news, we spent it already. Sorry. That's how fast we are. That's why we were late. We're spending your money.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into it, on the air, but I mean, I asked Kevin. I said, Kevin, when you bring me my dinner, I want a hamburger. And dude shows up with a previously cheeseburger with the cheese scraped off. And I said, Kevin, this is not what I asked for. And he said, I'm sorry, Mr. Hockey Jerk. And then I took off my white glove and I smacked him in the face with it. And then we almost had to call HR. It was crazy. But everything's fine. We cooled off. Kevin and I hugged it out. Ian was there. It was great.
Sure, yeah.
And now we're here.
And Kevin is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I saw he tweeted out that he was. Is he in Ontario, Canada right now, or did I read his tweet wrong?
If he's here, I have no idea.
I read his tweet that said Hamilton, Ontario, and I'm like, there's no way he's there.
No. It was the he was watching the national game for the CHL on Sportsnet today. Was the Greyhounds playing against the Hamilton Bulldogs, which was a rematch of the OHL finals last year.
Gotcha. Okay, because the way I read his tweet, or the way it was phrased, made it seem like he was there, and I was like, okay, I missed that.
Oh, and yeah, and that's how the show affects. No, it doesn't affect the Leafs at all.
All right, not yet,
but
still time. There's still time.
So much time in this show. I mean, I have these I think I've wrote the most detailed notes that I've written in probably months, which means that we're gonna use probably a third of them if we're lucky.
That's usually how it goes. When we're prepared, we blow through it quick, and
blow through it super fast.
And when we're on the seat of our pants, so much stuff pops into our head, and then we have a 3-hour show.
Right. So 15-minute show. Here we go. Boom. The Sharks are winning, or at least they've won recently.
Hey, it's like you always say: when the Sharks do good, it's good.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't. I've been kind of out of the loop with the Sharks because other games happen when I'm working. Should we be excited, or should we just be cautiously optimistic at this point? Because I see the scores, and I think Dallas is an okay team. And they're on the road and they got some road wins, which is important. But I'm just I still look at their last 10 and you're 5-4-1. Has anything really changed yet? 3 wins is nice, but you're still one game over 500 if you're looking at strictly wins and losses.
I think if they can sustain this level of play, I think it's one thing. But I hate to say, I hate to crap on a win because a win's a win. But you look at the teams they beat. They beat the Dallas Stars and the Carolina Hurricanes, who are both maybe playoff teams, but they're fringe teams. And then you look at the New Jersey Devils, who, for lack of a better term, are just ass this year.
Right.
And so I would like to see, the 2 games they played this year against Nashville, the game against, just in general, I would like to see the game against the Calgary Flames also comes to mind. I would just like to see good games against good teams. And I feel like that's something we've asked the Sharks to do for us for years, but I mean, it's still, it's still very much a measuring stick. And here I go. This is how that things are back to normal. I'm using a cliche and starting it by saying how much I hate the cliche. I hate using the term measuring stick, but a lot of these games are going to be measuring stick games. And, thankfully, it looks like the Sharks have turned things around. We'll see. Only time will tell. But I think if you're looking short term, I definitely think there's a lot to be encouraged by.
Yeah. And I think that's the way to look at it. Obviously, they've made some adjustments. I think it's interesting. Because I still try and watch Twitter and stuff and just kind of see what's going on. And it seems like there's a new Sharks split divide, and it's Team Ryan versus Team Shimmick. It feels like. And I don't know where to go with it, because I feel like what I've seen of Shimmick, I haven't hated. Right. I really like Joachim Ryan. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not. I don't know if there needs to be a team here.
I think what it stems from is the what have you done for me lately thing.
Right.
And I think a lot of people see Shimmick, playing. I mean, it's not easy playing with Brent Burns, and the fact that he's playing so well, I think is getting a lot of people on board. With the whole Team Shimmick, Team Ryan thing. I mean, think about how many people loved Paul Martin before Joachim Ryan got called up.
That's true.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I enjoy what I've seen from Shimmick, but that doesn't mean I've necessarily hated Joachim Ryan's game either. I think the one key difference for me, anyways, I don't know if you saw, but Shimmick's first NHL game, I don't remember who they played. I think it might have been when they played Dallas, or maybe it was the game before that. But the Sharks had offensive pressure, and Burns started to come off the right point, and Shimmick basically pointed at him and said, "No, you stay over there." And I'm just like, that's what we need. And I think that's where he and Joachim Ryan differ. Is I feel like with Ryan, he's a good player, no doubt, but I feel like it's more of like, okay, I'm going to follow Brent Burns, and I'm going to make sure Brent Burns is doing what he needs to do, and then I'm going to do what I need to do. Versus Shimmick, he's kind of taking charge, and he's saying, okay, Burnsy, you're going to go over here because I'm going to be here, kind of thing.
Right.
Which I like to see. Sense. He's as a rookie, and you already have that kind of big D energy. Like, it's good to see.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's funny because like there's something Kurz wrote too, and it's not in the same vein, but kind of in the same vein, where the Sharks have obviously had problems defending this year, and a lot of it I think is systematic, but I think some of it is because Kurz was saying like how all the analytics for Karlsson and Vlasic together are great, but they're both soft on the puck. Like, neither one of these guys is going to hit you off the puck. They're going to use their stick. Like, Vlasic's not going to, run you over like a freight train in front of the net. He's going to poke at you with his stick. And, and for the most part, Vlasic, is really good at that game. But at the same time, it's like, I think that's the thing that I've liked about Shimmick is that, he's not afraid to go in there and actually move a guy off the puck.
Yeah, and I think too I look at Shimmick, and not a lot of people are talking about Brendan Dillon this year either, but I think both of them have done a really good job of being that guy who can hit a guy off the puck, but they're not like totally cement skates out there either. Like, they're very mobile defensemen who can move, and should a hit put them out of place, they can get back into their position relatively quick, and it's something. Like you said, I feel like this team in general, again, even though fighting and hits and all that stuff it's great and fantastic, but I think seeing a guy like more physical, I think physicality is good because it kind of it allows you to do more. You know what I mean? Like, if you're just using your stick to poke the puck off a guy like a Vlasic or like an Erik Karlsson, like, right. Okay, sure, it'll work, but it's limiting the amount of times that you can potentially get the puck off a guy, versus if you're just balls to the wall physical all the time, like Shimmick, like you open yourself up to getting the puck away more.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. It's like you want hitting, but you want well-timed hits. And I don't feel, and then this is from what I've seen, and what I've seen is not a lot lately, unfortunately. But, from what I've seen, from what little I've seen, I feel like Shimmick does a good job of taking the body without just, he's not just out there just hitting with reckless abandon.
Right.
And I think I think that's the key. Like, you want some physicality, but you're right. You don't want someone to, to go look for the big hit, Roman Pollock style, and take yourself way out of the play because you don't have the skates to catch up again.
Yeah, exactly. And thankfully, the biggest issue in that respect was, I think about when Brendan Dillon first came to the team, he wasn't like the most awful skater, but he definitely wasn't a good skater. And seeing him work on that the last 3 summers, it's encouraging from that standpoint. But I don't know. Brendan Dillon might be the best Sharks defenseman this year.
Wow, how the world has changed.
Yeah, friend of the show, Rocket Backhander, said that Brendan Dillon makes his partners better, and I think we've seen that. We were very annoyed when Erik Karlsson and Brendan Dillon got put together, but I feel like since that pair has started to gel well, I think Erik Karlsson has done better with Brendan Dillon than with Marc-Edouard Vlasic.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because it's like you always have like the numbers versus the eye test, and the eye test would say yes, and the numbers don't necessarily agree. But I think it kind of goes back to what Kerr said about how and I'm not, and don't get me wrong, I'm like, not me, I'm a somewhere in between guy. I'm not 100% analytics, I'm not 100% eye test. I try to make sense of what I see with the numbers, and but I think there's something to be said for what Kerr said about how they like Brendan Dillon is not a soft player on the puck by any stretch.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that maybe while the numbers, Vlasic and Karlsson definitely pushed possession more, I do agree. Like, we've had problems on the defensive side of the puck all the time. And yes, when Karlsson and Vlasic were on the ice, it's important to say that they generally were in the offense. They generally pushed play to the offensive zone, but when they couldn't, it generally ended up in the back of the net. And that's partially Jones not having a great season as well. But I don't know. I don't think it's something that should be completely discounted. Like, I don't think what Kerr said should be completely discounted out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there's an element of there's definitely an element of truth there.
Absolutely. And I think too, you mentioned Martin Jones. I think a big reason why the Sharks have seemingly turned the corner lately is because of Martin Jones. And Martin Jones, he's starting to make the saves that he probably shouldn't. But he's also making the saves that he should, and
which is always nice.
So we're seeing Martin Jones get back to that level of play now. Whether this is a hot streak or whether this is a sign of things to come, who knows? But
right,
it would be nice if this is the level of play that we're going to get for the rest of the season. And I think too, even the games that the Sharks dropped recently, the game in Dallas, and I believe there was another one before that where the Sharks, I would say for the most part, played well. It was the last part of the game where things sort of got out of control, but I think slowly over time we've started to see the Sharks, turn the ship little by little, and now I think, depending on how this next stretch of games goes, I think the Sharks are in a really good spot to finally play the way that everybody expected them to play, where they were going to run away with the division and all this stuff. And you got Chicago tomorrow, who is they're 31st in the league, right, and they've won 4 games in the last 20 or something really ridiculous. But then Minnesota and Winnipeg are big games, big central playoff teams, and even the LA Kings, who are 30th in the league, but the LA Kings still like to give the Sharks fit. So these next
yes.
Yeah, and even just looking at the schedule, after we got 3 Central games, and then after that, we close out the regular season with 5 straight divisional games.
Right. I feel like that's an important thing too. Like the schedule, like I feel like the Sharks are finally out of the woods when it comes to the schedule. Like obviously, look, at their schedule's never going to be perfect. Like there's always going to be, but I feel like the schedule they had to start the season was pretty rough, and I'm not making excuses for them,
right?
Because you play the games that are put in front of you, and championship teams find ways to win games regardless of whether they're back-to-back or whatever. And I don't think when you look at some of the other teams that are doing well, like a Winnipeg, for example, Winnipeg has a shitty travel schedule.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not as terrible as the Sharks, but but other teams, the Sharks do have one of the crappier schedules, but at the same time, you got to find a way to win.
Yeah, exactly. And teams like Winnipeg and teams like Nashville, and even the teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning who are way out there. These are the quote unquote measuring stick teams, but their travel is not exactly favorable either. Nashville is in the Eastern time zone, and
right.
they're facing teams, obviously who are in the Central time zone, and even Winnipeg. Winnipeg is the only Canadian team in their division, so that adds an extra layer of, you have to go through immigration. You have to, it's an extra layer of stuff that you have to do just to get where you're going. And because they're the only Canadian team in their division, that's, 6 other teams in your division times how many ever games you play in their house. It gets exhausting.
Yep.
Anybody who has flown to another country will tell you that it's an extra layer of just annoying.
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't know. So I'm curious to see where this goes. I think with the schedule lightening up, and I think the Sharks, they're not flush with cap space, but they could make a move.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I don't know. We know it won't happen, but I feel like there are a handful of guys on this team who, by individually, don't really count against. But when you start to do the math, it adds up. Melka Karlsson and Jonas Donskoy combining for almost $4 million, and they've got 6 or 7 goals between them.
Right. Dave's asking, have we discussed firing DeBoer yet? We're not discussing firing DeBoer this show because we've discussed it.
We don't want to get him fired.
we don't want to have, we don't have our usual mojo right now, so I don't know if we would get him fired. We've talked about firing DeBoer on previous shows to death. I don't think there's really nothing new to add to that conversation, in my opinion. I haven't changed my opinion on it. I still feel like, it probably would be the right thing to do despite the last 3 wins. I feel like and it doesn't always work. I'm not saying it's a surefire thing where you fire the coach and everything goes well, because for every Pittsburgh or every Los Angeles, there's a Los Angeles this year. There's a Chicago this year. There's a St. Louis this year.
St. Louis, yeah.
Where it has, zero effect or it backfires completely. Look, I haven't really changed my stance on it, but there's nothing new to add to that conversation.
Yeah, and then like you said, I don't know. I personally don't think this should be the case, but I feel like the way the Sharks have played the last 4 or 5 games, I think has bought him some time. Now, 5 divisional games in a row to close out 2018, that could be huge.
Yeah, no, exactly. Oh man. Where are we going to go next? So Ryan Merkley, apparently a good prospect for the Sharks, gets traded in the O. He goes from the Guelph Storm to the Peterborough Petes. So the Guelph Storm were, in my opinion, a team that thought they would be better this year. A lot of people entered the season, including myself, thinking that the Greyhounds, who have been, a power in the Western Conference of the OHL, would be in a rebuilding year. And here they sit. I thought it was going to be a rebuilding year. I thought, by the trade deadline, we're going to say goodbye to Morgan Frost and he's going to go to somewhere like London and make me sad. But that hasn't happened. And Guelph, who I think thought they would be a better team, aren't. They're a middle of the pack team. So tell me if this sounds familiar at all. They're a middle of the pack team. Their schedule, I think they're 1 game over 500. Again, you can look at points percentage, which paints a much prettier picture for team. But if you look at just straight wins and losses, which I think is, I think it's important to look at both points percentage and winning percentage. But if you look at just wins and losses, this is a team that's underperformed from where they thought they would be. And I don't think that I think they realize now that, they might make the playoffs, but they're probably not going to beat a Sioux Greyhounds team or a London Knights team that's, are basically running away with the conference. So they moved him to, Peterborough. Peterborough is another team that is, they're kind of middle of the pack as well. Peterborough Petes are 18-14, 18-14. They are, they're fifth in their conference right now. There's only conferences in the O. But again, so it's kind of a lateral move for him. But at the same time, I feel like the return that Guelph got was pretty good for him when you consider that, your window to win in junior hockey is really small, because if you have, a superstar, you have him for 2 years. And if he's just a really, really good player, you may be lucky to have him for 4, but the NHL might swoop in and gut your team. So sometimes you just gotta, bite the bullet when things aren't going well, and you reload and hope that, down the road you can catch yourself on the upswing when one of the perennial powerhouses, your Oshawas, your Londons, your Kitcheners, you want to catch them on the downswing. Which I think is, other than London, has really happened. A lot of the teams that are doing really well this year aren't really perennial powerhouses. Ottawa is a good team, but I wouldn't call them a perennial powerhouse. The Sudbury Wolves have never really won anything, and they're 21-8-1-1, which is insane. So a lot of questions were like, a lot of questions that I got on Twitter about this situation is this a similar situation when like Timo Meier got sent to Rouyn-Noranda? And I'd say no, because Rouyn-Noranda was already stacked, and Halifax was on the downswing. So they offloaded some assets. Rouyn-Noranda wanted to win now. Halifax wanted to reload for the future. In this situation here, I feel like the Petes aren't, again, Ottawa's really, really good, and Chmielewski's a big part of that. Sudbury's really good. Niagara's pretty good this year. And then it kind of goes from there. It's kind of wide open from there. I think the Petes are hoping that I think it's a weaker conference. And I feel like they're trying to, maybe push and just kind of see what happens, because once the playoffs hit, I mean, the games on paper, they're not won on paper. So, and then obviously with the Merkley situation, obviously he was passed over for an invite to Team Canada. I don't think that should really surprise anyone. And the reason for that is really, really simple. Team Canada, the approach they take, obviously they generally take complete players. They don't take, even if a guy's tearing it up scoring on the forward side of the puck, if he can't play defense, he might get passed over, or he might get, a guy that you would think would play up much higher in the lineup ends up playing a minor role. So Ryan Merkley, obviously having the offensive chops he does and the puck moving chops he does, is still an adventure in the defensive zone. So I feel like that his omission really shouldn't surprise anybody. And then add the baggage, which you can't talk about Ryan Merkley without the baggage, unfortunately. And I feel like even if he's come along this year, from the sounds of it, like he's had less outbursts and less moments of stupidity. So I feel like it shouldn't surprise anyone that he wasn't selected for Team Canada. And this trade, I know coming in as the same amount of time as that, I don't think it's related. I think for Merkley, I think he has improved a little, but when he's still in Guelph, where obviously all that baggage came from. I think that a clean slate in Peterborough, obviously he's always going to have his baggage, but it's not going to be front and center. It's not going to be, he has a clean slate in Peterborough going forward, and it's going to be what he makes of it. Yeah, there's going to be the stuff from Guelph, but that's going to be in Guelph. This is a new team, new situation, new teammates, new coaching staff, so I hope he makes the most of it. And I hope we don't hear, Ryan Merkley breaking sticks and throwing temper tantrums and occasionally just not being very good, There's been a couple times today, not today, sorry, but recently where, he's just kind of bailed on a play and just coasted, in key situations in overtime. And obviously, you don't want to see that. So I feel like, to kind of just wrap this up and put a little bow on it, I feel like it's a good thing for both the Storm and for Merkley. And we'll see how it goes.
I think too, when you look at a team like Guelph, who, like you said, is not a very good team this year. I think organizations like, Hockey Canada, USA Hockey, that kind of thing, I feel like there's a little bit of a bias where they tend to not pay a super high amount of attention to crappy teams. And I mean, not to discount what you say, because I absolutely agree with everything you said, but I think if you're looking for some kind of non-personal issue related reason, I mean, it's very possible. And while you were talking, I just want to interject really quick. So Scott Lawton of the Philadelphia Flyers just cut the Canucks defense to ribbons all by himself and scored a goal. It was pretty impressive.
Nice.
But yeah, and like AO says, as long as he doesn't start fighting his own teammates, then I think we're good. And I agree, although as we saw earlier today,
Blues can get you an extension.
Yes, the Blues gave Bertuzzo a 3-year extension, so now we all know what the market rate is if you're able to beat up your teammates.
I don't mind that. Like, I don't really get upset when I see teammates throw down, like, especially in a season that's going is like, don't you kind of want to see that, like, from your team when things are going that off the rails? Like, I want to see that frustration, man. At least it shows like guys are engaged.
And there's, you obviously care about how your team is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on a final note before we jump off all things Sharks, in the World Junior Championships, Sasha Chmelevski is going to be playing for Team USA. Ivan Chekovich will be playing for Russia, and former Sharks prospect Josh Norris will also be playing for Team USA. I'm looking forward to watching the tournament this year. I love this tournament. This is like one of the highlights of my year, right next to the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I'm looking forward to watching as much of these games as I can, probably on replay. But hey, that's life.
Let's talk about, everybody was going on and on in training camp, myself included, about Sasha Chmelevski and how he looked like he could get his 9 games and all this stuff. And then, he's not having a bad year, but here comes Ivan Chekovich and he's leading the whole world in like everything. I was just looking this season alone. He's flirted with leading the whole queue in scoring. I believe right now he's 3rd or 4th. 3-time Q Player of the Week, 2-time CHL Player of the Week or Player of the Month, I think, one of those. And I actually read that Chekovich is the first player to ever be a 2-time CHL Player of the, whatever their criteria is, week, month, which is pretty impressive. Now
it is.
It's the Q, but that doesn't mean it's not impressive. And I was kind of BSing on Twitter a little bit, but I mean, depending on how much turnover there is on this Sharks roster this year, I feel like he could be in a Sharks sweater sooner than we think.
Yeah, I mean, if not a Sharks sweater, even just a Barracuda sweater sooner than we think too, because like he's got to be getting to the point where I don't know if he was drafted or loaned. It's always that's the thing that always throws me off, right? Drafted or loaned.
Let's see. Let me see if I can.
I don't know if he's considered a.
Well, he was drafted in 2017, and in 2017 he was with, however you say his team name, Bay Como. I don't know.
Como, yeah, the Drakkar.
I don't speak France, but I mean, there's nothing from elite prospects that indicates to me whether or not he was loaned. But yeah, no, he's been. Yeah, no, I agree. He's been really good.
Sharks prospects in general, I think in junior have been having a good time. Jake McGrew was star of the night last night. There's been some really good. It's I wish I had more time to watch more hockey because there's a lot of the Sharks prospects in the junior ranks are tearing it up. I mean, again, Merkley is one of the leading defensemen, if not the leading defenseman in the OHL right now. I haven't checked the numbers as of late, so I'm going to cover my bases there. But I'm almost positive he's the leading defensive scorer in the league. Like there's some exciting kids coming up, and I am looking forward to when the junior season ends and some of these guys get their cup of coffee with the Barracuda, which will happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the other thing too is, I mean, if Baie-Comeau, I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't follow the Q as much as I probably should. I don't know how good of a team they are. I imagine they're very good. But if for whatever reason they have an early exit, no doubt in my mind, Chekovic comes back to the Barracuda again. And he is going to be 20 on the 4th of January, which means next year he can start the season with the Barracuda if he does not make the Sharks.
Right. There's something I didn't put in the notes, and Todd Gack asked a question in the chat, which I think is important, and then we'll get into the Pacific Division. Obviously, the Pacific Division is going to grow by a team starting in 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is now. I don't know, in the year 3000. The Seattle Blanks will be joining the league. The question is what's the rules going to be like for the expansion draft? I've seen a lot of expansion stuff, and I feel like it angers me a little bit. Like, I understand it's an easy article to write, it's easy clicks, but it kind of annoys me because it's like there's so much that is going to change between now and then. It's like, oh well, this is our projected Seattle roster, and what is it, 2021, 2020, 2021, or 2021, 22? I don't remember exactly, but it annoys me.
It's so hard to it's so hard to predict something like that this far out, because far out, dude. But like because I remember thinking, like, I remember when Vegas expansion was first announced and everybody was kind of pontificating about who was going to be claimed or unprotected and traded and that sort of thing. And a lot of these guys who are up for unprotection, so to speak, could end up getting extensions, and vice versa. Guys with no move clauses could get bought out.
Right. Yeah. So I'm curious to see what happens. But as far as the actual rules for the expansion draft goes, everything points to it being the exact same as the Vegas expansion draft. Same rules. So it'll be the exact same thing. I think the difference is going to be, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because I feel like it's just, yay, Seattle's coming, yay, expansion draft. But it's too soon. Don't worry. We'll do our expansion stuff when it gets closer to the time, because I feel like right now it's just killing time that we don't need to kill.
I think it's lame that Vegas is exempt from it. Like, if Seattle had joined the league this year, like, that's one thing. But by the time Seattle is picking their expansion team, Vegas will have been in the league for 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the way it was, I mean, that's
right. And I mean, I get it. And there's, there's a, I don't even know what you would say, but I mean, Vegas doesn't get a cut of the expansion fee, which I guess is your quote unquote punishment. But
right, that was the deal, right? Like it was rigged so that the current owners reap the benefits, but they also take the penalty of losing a guy. And I think the only difference between the Vegas expansion draft and the in this draft coming up is I think teams that are in a bind that might lose a player are probably just going to lose the player this time around.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to see a situation like where Minnesota throws the bus at them to keep.
See, you know what though, and a lot of people were very critical of that move, but to this day, I will defend that move because Matt Dumba, spoiler alert, it could be a finalist for the Norris Trophy this year.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I'm not saying, like, again, I just think you'll see less of that this year, though. Because
absolutely you will. But I think in that specific instance, there, the Minnesota Wild got a lot of heat for doing it, but I think it was absolutely the right move.
Right.
Because I would take a potential Norris Trophy defenseman over, discount, discount Milan Lucic and Chris Tierney.
Oh man. Wow. All right.
Hey, you made me say it.
Wow. That is crazy. All right, so let's talk about the Pacific Division, because I think the Pacific Division has gotten very interesting as of late. And I think there's a few teams that are obviously more interesting than others. Like, we're gonna save the Coyotes, Kings, and Canucks for last, because I don't think they're very interesting at all. To be completely honest, they're interesting for the wrong reasons.
Arizona was interesting.
Arizona, yeah, and now they're just too injured to.
Now they've broken my heart again this year.
Yeah, because that's what they do, and that's why I was not on that bandwagon. And even though I looked stupid at the start of the season, I don't look so stupid now. Thank you, Carolina. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start? Because you got 4 teams that I think are really interesting that I really kind of want to talk about. Obviously, being the Oilers, Flames, Ducks, and Golden Knights. Where would you like to start, good sir?
Why don't we just start from the top and go down?
All right, so that'd be the Flames, right?
Yes. Me and AJ Strong's Calgary Flames.
You're an AJ Strong.
So
are you gonna have like a? I kind of want to see you like with one of those Franken jerseys, like a Penguins, Flames, Sharks.
Well, I will
whatever, something else. I don't know.
All of our fans will be happy to know that I do own, I guess I will admit it, hand to a Bible, I do own a Flames sweater, but I do not own a Penguins sweater. So there you go. But for years, probably going back to the year the Sharks missed the playoffs, AJ and I both always just said, this is the year the Flames are going to break out. They got Doug Hamilton. They got Travis Hamonic. I was 100% down when they got Mike Smith. And finally, it's starting to all come together. But I think you look at this, you have to look at this from a couple of different perspectives. I think, Mike Smith is having a good year, which is obviously good considering he's a starting goalie. But also, David Riddick has come in and played really well when he needs to. And he actually, in their win against I do not want a Crosby jersey, Evgeny Malkin, Mr. AO. The Flames game against the Minnesota Wild today. Riddick got the start, which was technically his second game in a row because Mike Smith left the previous game early. But David Riddick has been a very capable backup, which, as we've seen in the last few years, Calgary has struggled to even find a starter. And now that they've got a capable starter and a capable backup, helps things. I think trading Dougie Hamilton was good. Now, that's not to say that Dougie Hamilton was bad and he should feel bad, because you know what? I like going to museums. Sue me, right? But you look at you look at this team. Dougie Hamilton is more of an offensively minded defenseman. Mm-hmm. That's nice. But you have then a Mark Giordano who might win the Norris Trophy this year. You also have that kind of Leafs Kessel. Jeez, what year is this? You also kind of have TJ Brody a little bit, and so you're trading Dougie Hamilton and you're getting in Noah Hannafin, who was the best defensive defenseman in his draft year. Mm-hmm. And his development has stagnated a little bit, but I think he's still on the right path. And I think coming into Calgary, it's a new environment. He's going to get the chance to get more minutes. I think it's huge for him, and it's been huge. And then obviously going down, you've had guys like Shillington, Valimaki, Rasmus Anderson, who all rookie defensemen, all have come in and played really well, in their games this year. And then the centerpiece of that deal, so to speak, Elias Lindholm. I mean, for years it was always Goodrow, Monahan, and whoever, Frolik, Sam Bennett, Troy Brower. Like they James the Real Deal Neal. They tried to fit everybody there, and finally they've got Elias Lindholm, who for whatever reason he's clicking with that line. And I mean, the three of them are combined for I want to say almost 90 points at this point in the season, which is ridiculous. And I don't know if you've seen the purple Gatorade thing, but it's one of my favorite things right now in the NHL.
Lindholm, I think that's a good place to start. I mean, Lindholm has 34 points so far this year. His career high is 45.
Yeah.
And we're 30 games into the season. He's going to easily, knock on wood, because I don't want to be the podcast that gets Elias Lindholm injured, but he should easily have a career year this year. The other crazy thing, I have some notes written down here. The Flames have 5 players averaging more than a point a game right now, like on a more of a point a game pace. Now, obviously, some of the shooting percentages here are a little high, so this won't sustain until the end of the season, or likely won't. Maybe we'll see. Johnny Gaudreau, 1.27 goals, averaging goals per game. Monahan 1.15, Tkachuk 1.15, Lindholm 1.03, and Giordano 1.06. All over a point a game. It's insanity, like how well they're doing as far as points production to go. Obviously, Tkachuk, that's a big boost for them. Because I think like Gaudreau's putting up points. Obviously, Monahan has always quietly put up, been counted on for about 60, 65 points, I feel like. So having Tkachuk come in and Lindholm boost that offense, I mean, that's been obviously a huge boon for them. And you mentioned Giordano with the Norris. I mean, he's got to be in the Norris conversation. And I feel bad for him because there was years where I thought he should have ran away with the Norris, and then he'd get injured and be taken out of the conversation due to injury. And I mean, so far this year, he's in the top scoring defenseman. And he's 3rd overall in scoring, and he has a +20 rating, which I'm sure Norris voters think is important.
Oh, plus minus. It's plus 2 digits. Oh my God. That offense is very potent. They actually they threw up a stat because I actually watched their game today. The top power play unit I believe is accounted for 21 power play goals this year. And the second power play unit, I think, only has 4 power play goals. So I think if you read the tea leaves a little bit, that kind of tells you where they might go. But I think with how well their defense is playing, and I think Travis Hamonic, too, has finally started to adjust to that system. And I think Travis Hamonic has been playing with Noah Hannafin, so it's kind of a good, shutdown defensive pair. And then, like I said, they've got 2 very capable goalies.
Yeah, I mean, a +23 goal differential. I mean, this is a team like Calgary. To me, I mean, this is definitely for real. I mean, they're hanging with the Nashvilles and the Winnipegs of the West. Like, they are, they play. They pick, I don't think I'd be curious to see how many games they played within their division, because I know like a lot of, the Sharks haven't really played that many teams in the division. But
I know they've played Edmonton what feels like a lot of times.
Sure. Pre Hitchcock, because that's the important key there.
I am unsure.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, this team to me, like this is a team that's going to be fun to watch, and I think this team has a playoff run in them, because now with the way the things are going, I don't think the wild card is such a kiss of death for the top seed in the Pacific anymore. No,
absolutely not. Especially like we've talked about, the Pacific has just been on fire lately, and you were talking about earlier in the OHL with ebbs and flows, backswing, forward swing. I think we're starting to see the top of the Central is absolutely the be all end all, right? But the middle and the bottom of the Central division has been not very exciting a whole lot lately.
No, I mean, it's kind of, you look at the teams. I mean, Dallas is kind of, they're there, but they're not great. Like they're, again, you got like Minnesota is, again, they're kind of there, but they don't scare me. Colorado is a ton of fun to watch. Nashville's a ton of fun to watch. Winnipeg, I think, doesn't get nearly as much love as they should, especially north of the border, because of some town in the center of the hockey universe, apparently. It bothers me how much love Winnipeg doesn't seem to be getting. I mean, I understand all the media is based in Toronto, but like this team that, everyone's championing as this, this Stanley Cup contending juggernaut, like they haven't won a playoff series at least the Jets, the Jets were in the conference final last year. Like, that's where I would be, like, I don't know. It bothers me. I'm not going to get into it again.
Yeah. Ask me about the Leafs when they lose Jake Gardiner.
Oh, man.
Like, everybody loves to crap on Jake Gardiner, but Jake Gardiner's their second best defenseman.
Well, they still have Ron Hantzy, so.
Yeah. They've still got Nikita Zaitsev for 6 more years.
Man. Wow. I bet they're just waiting for they're just like, okay, let's get this lockout over with so we can get the compliance buyouts rolling, please.
Oh, my
All
God.
Right. We're talking about the Pacific Division, damn it.
I can't wait for compliance buyouts.
My favorite time. Like, it makes things interesting. Okay, obviously, we talked about the Sharks, so we'll skip the Sharks. We already talked about the Sharks. We talked about the Sharks all the time. We're Sharks podcast for the most part. So let's talk about Edmonton, who is now just on absolute fire since Ken Hitchcock has come on board, which I think is what people expected I think a lot of people thought, oh man, Hitchcock's got to be done because after the Dallas thing, but
he retired twice and came back.
I know. But after the Dallas thing didn't really work out, right? Like, Dallas missed the playoffs, and Ken Hitchcock had pretty much had a reputation at that point of he's going to come in and then fix your stuff, and then because of the way he coaches, diminishing returns, which I think is the same for a lot of coaches, to be completely honest. But so Ken Hitchcock has come in, and the Oilers have obviously caught in fire, and it's obviously helped, right?
But I still you look at their stats, and absolutely they've played well lately, but I mean, it's not obvious to see, or it's not difficult to see. I mean, who's at the top? It's right. Connor, it's Leon, it's Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I mean, if any of those three guys go quiet, then this team is right back where they started. And obviously, who could have predicted that Alex Chiasson would have 14 goals? Certainly not me. But, I think the team is scoring a lot of goals, which obviously scoring goals wins games. We've established this. But I think, a lot of that success I would attribute as well to the play of Koskinen.
Yes.
And, I was talking to Trin Potrats, our resident Oilers fan / friend, and he's all but said that Koskinen is the starter now.
Oh, yeah.
And Cam Talbot, like AO says, Cam Talbot's been hot garbage this year.
Yeah.
But that's what happens when you start 70 games a season. You tend to wear out. But
that's Corey Schneider about that.
Yeah. And I think, too, like I look at Koskinen and I look at the big line, obviously McDavid and Draisaitl, it's helping. But unlike Calgary, who's getting help from everybody, I don't think that Edmonton's success is long-term. I think, maybe they make the playoffs, and we'll see. There's plenty of time left. But I just don't see them being this hot forever, right? And
right.
Let's say they do make the playoffs, like, how many games into a 7-game series is Hitchcock going to bench Draisaitl? I mean, we saw it with Tarasenko in St. Louis. We saw it with Jason Spezza in Dallas. Like, I mean, unfortunately, as good of a coach as he's been in the regular season, he tends to ruffle the feathers of his star players. And now, everything I've heard about him is he says like it or GTFO, but at the same time, you can't really afford to treat your best player like that.
Yeah. It's hard, right? Because, like, for me, like, I look at, and I have the numbers, just for what you just said. Like, obviously, you look at the, you want to look at where all the offense is coming from. McDavid, Draisaitl, and Nugent-Hopkins account for 46.8% of all goals scored by the Edmonton Oilers. If you look at, if you go back and look at Calgary, yeah, they've got some guys putting pucks in the net, but they're kind of getting contributions from everywhere. And then if you want to look at the points, it's a very similar number, 47.2% of their 120 points. 120 points is from those three players. And it's funny because remember how, like, I think it was like last year, the big talk was like Nugent Hopkins getting shopped for something. And I can't imagine where this team would be without Nugent Hopkins now.
Well, and you know what though, if you look at the Oilers' last few games, they've for the while, I mean, right before Todd McClellan was fired, they started running Nugent Hopkins as Connor's winger, and that's where, I think that's where a lot of that comes from. Now, I don't want to say this if I'm wrong, but I honestly feel like lately, like especially when the Oilers have gotten into trouble, I believe the three of them have been the line, and everybody else is just sort of there.
Right. I mean, I can't dispute that. I don't know. I'd have to ask Trent.
Alex Chiasson's 14 goals aside.
Right. And Hitchcock doing the smart thing, Todd McClellan, infamous for playing his money goalie.
Mm-hmm.
Infamous for playing his money goalie. Obviously, money goalie wasn't good. And Hitchcock comes in and like you said, plays Mikko Koskinen. Koskinen's 11-3-1 with a .930 save percentage and a .212 GAA. Cam Talbot, on the other hand, is 7-9-2 with an .894 and a 3.22. Like, obviously, just not good enough numbers for a starter. If anyone can tell you that numbers like that are bad, it's Sharks fans. The thing that concerns me about Edmonton is if they can sustain. Like, Bob Nicholson has been quoted now saying that who's the president of the team, basically says if the Oilers make the playoffs, then Chiarelli's probably safe, which I think is a terrible, terrible thing. But whatever, if they make the playoffs, great. I guess that's fine. The thing that would concern me in Edmonton going forward is, what is Mikko Koskinen? Is he going to be the guy going forward, or is he just going to be another Cam Talbot, one hot year gets paid, and then what, right?
Well, they're both pending unrestricted free agents this summer, so wouldn't it be something? They can
afford it.
Wouldn't it be something if the Oilers lost them both?
Oh, man.
But I don't know. This team is going to be. It's going to be. Here we go again with cliches. It's going to be a big gut check for them because just looking at their cap friendly now, Andre Sekera has been on LTIR all since the beginning of the season, and based on my understanding of Achilles tendon injuries, if he plays this season, I'll be surprised. I'll just say that.
Shocked.
Yeah, because that's a minimum. That's a 12-month recovery. But you have Oscar Klefbom now, who just had surgery on his finger. He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. Chris Russell, analytics darling, as Drew Weber will tell you, is going to be. He's on the shelf for, I don't know when he was put on injured reserve, but at least another week. So the Oilers are going to be out without some key defensemen. So it's going to be. This is the time to see if they can sustain this level of play or if they're going to slide back down to earth. And
right.
And even then, I'm going back to Alex Chiasson too, career high in goals, and he's a pending UFA. That's dangerous.
Yeah, and Vince brings up a good point. Like, Koskinen is not this this young goalie they found. He's 30.
Well, I think that would be in their favor because you could make the argument that he, played a lot of years as a pro in Finland. So. Sure. You could argue that he's already gone through the developmental stage, and now this is his "quote unquote" prime.
Right. But again, it's it's something you got to still be careful to because when it comes to how long do you commit if going forward,
right.
If he has a good season, how long do you commit to that? Right. I mean, Roberto Luongo. Charles bring up Roberto Luongo as a guy that's obviously sustained some good play into late years that wouldn't be expected, but those guys are the exception to the rule.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always going to be outliers, no matter what.
Yeah, I just feel like those guys like that, guys like Craig Anderson, to a lesser extent, who's not obviously as old as Luongo. Marty Brodeur played a lot, but I mean, Marty Brodeur was still even a shell of himself by the end.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that one playoff run, the cup run, that was pretty much it. Like, I think after that, whatever was left in the can was very little.
Right.
Going forward. So I don't know, like, Oilers are hard because it's a hard team because like it's hard to. I always have trouble betting against a team that has Connor McDavid, who can take over a game on his own. But at the same time, I would not be shocked to see the Oilers slip into the playoffs as a wildcard team. I don't know if they're going to be if they're going to lock themselves into the third or even push higher than that in the division. But this is a team that I think could be a wildcard team if some of the Central teams can't pick up the slack.
Yeah, it's tough because we've seen, we see these Pacific Division teams who they struggle, and then here come playoffs and they're on fire. And then we've also seen really good teams, once the playoffs start, they struggle. I feel like this is one of the few years lately where it's, it hasn't happened very often, but where I really don't think, aside from the winner of the division, I really don't think there's a shoo-in for a playoff spot, at least a divisional playoff spot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, Calgary's hot right now, but think 2 years ago when the Flyers won 10 games in a row and lost in the first round, right? And
right.
And then in even San Jose, like the year Joe Thornton and Logan Couture both got hurt, like the Sharks were going to win the division that year, and then everything bad happened, and even last year, like the Ducks looked really good going into the playoffs last year, and they, as we know, laid an egg. But then you have teams like the LA Kings when they won their first Stanley Cup, where they're just average the whole year, and then the playoffs start and it's another gear. So it's a very unpredictable season, I feel like, this year. And it's going to be one of those things where, a lot of the time we don't start watching the standings until the middle of the March, but I think standing watch is going to start early this year just because of how many teams are in it, but also how many teams are sliding out of it, especially in the Central Division. Like the Central Division perpetually took up 5 playoff spots out of 8. Now I'm not so sure.
I'm not sold either because, unless Dallas can somehow turn things around again and get back on track, Minnesota is like the ultimate wild card to me because I don't know what this team's going to do. I never know what this team's going to do.
See, and that's the other thing too is, I have a buddy who's a Minnesota Wild fan, and we were both kind of talking, and, I told him, I was like, I honestly think Minnesota is going to be the worst team in the division this year. But then now I think they could win the division. And it's that level of unpredictability. I mean, it makes the sport fun. Don't get me wrong, but it also makes it hard to talk about.
Yeah, no, I get you. So I guess next would be Anaheim, which is, to me, I think the most fascinating team in the Pacific because this is a team that I feel like, the numbers always say should be terrible. And they're never terrible. They just defy the Ducks are a team that seems to just defy logic all the time.
Oh yeah. Like the Ducks since 2016, the Ducks have gotten worse every year, I feel like, but they still keep hanging around. And I know I'm going to get some flack for it, but you know what? I love Ryan Getzlaf, and the dude's a player. Like, I know he cries a lot, but he can put that team on his back by himself, and he's doing it once again, especially when you have, Ricard Raquel is out. Corey Perry is out. Patrick Eaves, I don't know if he's playing again, but he's certainly not making an impact if he is. And then you look, too, like, again, I mean, think back to the last few years, the Ducks, they lose Shea Theodore. Hey, no problem. They lose Sammy Vatanen. No problem. Now they lose, I'm going to blank on his name. It's Marcus Pettersson, I believe is his name, who, does not have a whole lot of experience in the NHL, but is a good little defenseman who could be something down the road. And again, no problem. One Daniel Sprong, please, who was a solid goal scorer in his draft year. And in true Ducks fashion, we're seeing him, I think he was when Pittsburgh, I think he was back in Wilkes-Barre, but now with Anaheim, he's playing on the Ryan Getzlaf line. Of course, when Pontus Aberg is not on that line, and we're talking about Alex Chiasson, but even Pontus Aberg is having a career year. I think he shattered his career high in goals 2 weeks ago. Granted, I think his career high was like 7. So.
Right.
That's, if you're playing with Ryan Getzlaf, I mean, that's not a difficult thing to do. But I just think the Ducks they're getting help from a lot of different guys on their roster. And actually, I misspoke. His career high was 2, and right now he's at 10.
There you go. And that's the thing, right? Like you look at this team, and it's like, again, it defies logic. There's a team that has 1 double-digit goal scorer, which is Pontus Avery, right? Getzlaf leads the team with 26 points. Again, not like, you look at some of the other teams in the division that are hanging higher. I mean, there's multiple guys that are sitting at point totals like that. And the Ducks, they just like, it's the ultimate by committee team. Obviously concerned now with Ryan Miller going down because Ryan Miller has been able to step in and play some really good hockey for them. I mean, I think Ryan Miller's like 7-4-2, 2.71 GA with a 9.22. Those are great numbers for a backup. And those are games that John Gibson doesn't have to play. And with the Ducks fighting to stay, and you look at you look at some of the injuries they've had to overcome and everything, and now you lose Ryan Miller. I mean, they don't want to burn John Gibson out, which would be my concern now.
I feel like John Gibson, though. I feel like if there's anybody who could handle a heavy workload, I feel like it's John Gibson. We see this a lot, but ever since Frederick Anderson left the Ducks, John Gibson has been a horse for them. He was, in that series against the Sharks last year, he was their best player, and he played like ass. Yeah. So I've always been a fan of John Gibson. I'm documented as saying I think John Gibson is the best goalie in the Pacific Division right now.
Yes, he's absolutely is.
And I think
it's not even close.
Like I said, I think if anybody can carry the weight, it's him. He's 25 years old, and granted, if I'm a Ducks fan, I would like to see him stay healthy.
That's the concern, though, right? You put without Ryan Miller there. If Ryan Miller goes down, and then the Ducks are done. They're done.
Well, they claim now. Granted, he's struggling, but they claimed Chad Johnson on waivers 2 days ago.
Sure.
So it's a short-term option. But I didn't even realize this. First, and again, the Ducks are just a weird. Like, I don't even know. Like, they are just a crazy prospect farm. Like, everybody knows I love Sam Steele. Sam Steele came in, made an impact with the Ducks. Granted, he's back down with San Diego, but having a good year with San Diego. Same thing with Max Comtois, if that's your vernacular. He's gone back to Drummondville and is over point per game. And the Ducks just keep finding ways to find these guys. And even, like I said, they trade Marcus Pettersson, who is one of like 1,000 good defensemen they have. So, I feel like the Ducks motto should be, it's fine. And, they bring in Daniel Sprong, who has got 3 goals in 5 games.
Yeah. No, it's insane when you look at it, because they've really done really well bringing the players that they brought in, like for all the flack they get about about how maybe they're not the most fleet of foot team, but like it's just like never seem to find, like they always find guys when they need guys, they find guys. So you're right, Chad Johnson's probably going to be amazing, and because that's just what the Ducks do. I don't know. I mean, that'd be my concern though, because obviously if this team is going to go as far as Gibson takes them, I think that's the reality of the situation until he doesn't, and they do it anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of nervous though, because what if let's say Corey Perry comes back from whatever his ailment is,
right?
Spending too much time in radioactive pools of waste. But I don't know. Could this time off be good for Corey Perry? Where it's a situation where the start of your year is February, and so you haven't spent all this. You haven't spent all this energy just getting to the midway point of the season, where you start halfway through fresh. I mean, a lot of people have been saying Corey Perry isn't the same player he was 4 years ago. Maybe a later start helps him and the Ducks. Now, as a Sharks fan, I sure as hell hope that doesn't happen.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know. I still think if the Ducks make the playoffs, they're out in the first round. But the fact that they can find a way to make the playoffs with that team is amazing, considering, Kessler is a shell of what he once was, and
but that style of play catches up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like Rickard Rakell, but he hasn't had the year that Ducks fans have gotten accustomed to at all. Granted, I think he was hurt, which contributes to that.
Yeah,
but
he was hurt or is hurt. I don't know.
But
is something.
Yeah, but we've seen it many times. Ryan Getzlaf cannot do it by himself. John Gibson cannot do it by himself. But let's, to kind of wrap up on the Ducks, because I'm starting to get a taste of like garbage in my mouth talking about them so much. But talking about defensemen and just talking about being a farm for them, how about Brandon Montour?
Yeah.
19 points in 33 games, like, granted, second round pick of 2014, so you shouldn't be surprised. But again, he,
that draft was so stacked.
Yeah, he came out of nowhere last year. And now he's their highest scoring defenseman. Cam Fowler and his $8 million a year have nothing to say about it.
That's insane. All right. So I guess that brings us to the garbage. Time to take out the trash. All right. So I guess that brings us to Vancouver. Vancouver's still Vancouver. Vancouver doesn't really shock me. I mean,
are we going to talk about the Golden Knights?
Oh, did we miss the Golden Knights? I did miss the Golden Knights. Okay, we'll talk about the Golden Knights, I guess. Yeah, so Vegas is a team that's interesting because they, again, this is a team that started off bad. We thought would all be better, or at least some of us did. I know some people were like, "Wow, they're going to be garbage" because they should have been garbage last year. But they've suffered injuries. I would worry about how many games Fleury has started if I'm in Vegas right now.
I would worry about having Fleury on my team, but go ahead.
Well, man, Fleury hasn't been bad though. I mean, he's won them a ton of games. Like his numbers aren't insane. Like it's a .907 save percentage, but in the win column, he's got 18 wins.
Yeah, and I believe he's already got, at this point in the season, he's already got 5 shutouts, which is ridiculous,
right?
If you ask me. And I just think, I just think with the Golden Knights, I think the amount they're playing Marc-Andre Fleury, though, I think it will catch up to them. Now, I saw in the chat Stastny is back, and he is back. I'd be curious to know how much of an impact he can make right away.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know.
I'm just scares the crap out of me.
I really don't know what to think, because on one hand, I could see them make the playoffs because they've got some good pieces. Like they got Max Pacioretty, who I love Max Pacioretty, but he's hurt right now, and even Wild Bill is not gonna score 43 goals again. I'm sorry to tell you,
but he's not doing as for a guy who was supposed to regress totally back to earth. I mean, he's still leading the team in points, I think.
And he's got 13 goals, which is nothing to sneeze at. And Marchessault obviously is Marchessault. I just I don't know. I think they can make the playoffs, but I think to say they're going to go back to the Cup final again, I think would be a stretch.
I don't know about that, but I'd be worried about them if I'm a Pacific Division team looking at them in the rearview mirror, because I think that they could easily. They're a better team than they've played the first half of the season.
Yo, absolutely, and they've started to, they've started to kind of get that LA Kings thing about them, where like they just look like crap on paper, but then you play them and they smoke you.
I was going to say where they take half the season off and then turn it on and win a cup.
You know what? Regular season doesn't matter.
That's true. Obviously Eric Hall is out for them. Pacioretty, I'm not sure how long that's going to last. But again, the big concern is Fleury started all but 4 games, and anytime Malcolm Subban's gone in, it has not been good.
No, that's another guy. I generally am not a fan of picking goalies in the first round of the draft, but Malcolm Subban's not really, lived up to the hype behind him. And
He's like Subban, only in goal.
now, now, I think it would be interesting. Now, division trading obviously is frowned upon, and we can't do it. We can't have that in this league. But I don't know. Let's say Edmonton is total crap by the end of things. Could we see Vegas pick up Cam Talbot as a backup for the playoffs?
Wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they've got, that's the scary thing about Vegas, is they have the assets to blow. I will throw you out one better. Do they overpay for a Jimmy Howard?
Oh God. Yeah, actually, you know what? I could see that just because they're not in the division. But think about it like this: if I'm Kenny Holland and I'm getting a phone call and I look at it and it says George McPhee, I am freaking answering it, putting it on speaker. I'm going to my advisor. I'm like, get in the room right now.
Clear my schedule. Me and Kenny Holland are talking.
Yes, George, do you have 3 top 90 draft picks for me? Great.
Yeah, it's you know what I mean. Like it's one of those things. Like Vegas is a team that always concerns me. I think I just think they're better than they've been. And although that game in New Jersey the other night was really with the game against the Devils was really bad. The way they kind of coughed that one up. But all in all, I mean, there's been a lot to like about how they've played, unless you're a Sharks fan, then you don't like how they've played. But if you're looking at it as a neutral observer, there's a lot to like about how the Golden Knights have played in their last stretch of games.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So I guess now that brings us to Vancouver.
Yeah, sure. We can talk about the garbage.
All right, taking out the trash. Vancouver doesn't really surprise me. I mean, the one thing we said about Vancouver, despite all of their top end players, which their young players are really carrying the load, and that's something that obviously you want to see. They don't have the goaltending until they decide to actually finally bring Demko up. They don't have the goaltending.
I don't know. I'm looking at this game right now though, and Jacob Markstrom's 1 goal against is looking pretty good. But no, I do agree. I don't think Jacob Markstrom is a starter long term. I think he's got flashes of being a good goalie, but I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's due to be a starter in this league after his contract expires.
That ship should have sailed a long time ago, but it eventually just needs to sail because there's Vancouver.
I don't like. I feel like with all of the young guys they had, I feel like Vancouver was poised to take a forward step this year. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say that they've taken a step back, but I really feel like they're the same place they were last year. Like, like Pettersson's been nice, but I mean, where has Besser been? Kind of
Besser's
thing.
Still. I mean, let me bring this up because I feel like they're. I'm gonna have to look now because.
I mean, I think statistically, I think Besser's having a good year, but I think of 10 goals in 21 games. That's not bad, but I feel like if I'm a Canucks fan, I want to see Besser scoring. Like I want to see Besser with like the same amount of goals as like a Bo Horvat or an Elias Pettersson. Like I don't know. I think their offense is spread around very nicely though, which is obviously it's good. But if I'm them, I want I want another defenseman, and like you said, I want a better goalie.
Right, and I think that's the problem, though, right? I mean, it's hard to get points when you're not always playing in the offensive zone, and obviously, like they need a little help on the D. It's coming, but it's not there yet, obviously. But I mean, Pettersson's running away with the Calder at this point. I can't see anyone stopping him.
Oh, yeah, it's his trophy to lose.
But Borhovat has 29 points. Goldobin has 19 NHL points, which I don't think I ever thought I would see. And Brock Besser and Jake Virtanen, who was all but left for dead 2 years ago. Like we all thought his career was over. Mm-hmm. 15 points, nothing. 15 points, 34 games. That's nothing to scoff at.
Yeah, and I mean, he's. He definitely has not lived up to his expectations given where and when he was drafted, but But like you said, I mean, he's 5 points. He's 5 points away from, hitting his career high in half the amount of games. And I think with him, I mean, he's only 22, right? Like the slow burn is obvious with this one. And like I said, I think if they can get their prospects to all, to all progress in the right direction at the right time, I think Vancouver could dig themselves out of mediocrity sooner than a lot of people think. But again, need a goalie, need a goalie, need a defenseman, maybe a Mr. Erik Karlsson.
Oh,
maybe?
Don't say that. Stop.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying, I could see it.
Oh man, that's terrible. You just ruined the whole show. But I think if you're Vancouver, though, I think the thing you like, though, is you look at your top 5 scorers, and they're all young guys. They're all, they're the Petterssons, they're the Horvats, the Goldobin, who I think's been a pleasant surprise. Although I feel like Goldobin, when you've taken away from Pettersson, hasn't been nearly as good. The Besters, the Virtanen, like that's awesome that your top 5 scorers. I mean, yes, okay, it's not translating into the being a playoff team, but you have to like when those guys are outscoring the veterans that you've brought in to kind of hold the ship down. That we're supposed to be the kind of the holdover till these guys are ready. Like these guys are showing they're ready now. So if Vancouver, wants to make some moves, they can comfortably do so. It's just finding a goalie or getting Demko actually into NHL and having him actually translate. Vancouver might not be as bad as everyone thinks they're going to be for very long.
I think the thing that's important to note too is, like I said, the Canucks have not gotten worse. Which, if you're a Canucks fan, obviously that's good. But they've maintained, I guess their lot in life, so to speak, despite not having the Sedins, who, as we all know, drove the bus on that team for a decade plus, right? And you lose them essentially for nothing, and they're still doing relatively okay for themselves.
Yeah. A lot of questions about possible goaltenders that Vancouver might go after. I don't think that's the plan. I think they're perfectly content to wait for Demko. I think that if they went out and signed another guy, then that's alarms going off for me, I would think, about Demko's progression. Because Demko's got to be ready next year.
I mean, maybe, but I could almost see a situation where, like when they signed Ryan Miller, and it was like, okay, we're gonna have him until Markstrom can be the starter, and that was like openly said was it's gonna be Markstrom's net, and I feel like I do like Rob bringing up Jimmy Howard. Maybe Jimmy Howard is a guy. I almost said Vegas. Jimmy Howard is a guy Vancouver gives a 1-year deal to, if anything, be the fallback guy in case Demko can't play in the NHL, and then once Demko gets that experience and that confidence under his belt, then he becomes the starter. I could absolutely, given his age...
Yeah, it's a good insurance policy for sure. I just don't think you're going to see any... I shouldn't say... You're right. I feel like you're not going to see any signed long-term guys.
No.
Like, there might be stopgap guys brought in. I just don't see that. I'm not sure.
No, like Vancouver... Like, Jim Benning will not be giving Jake Allen a 6-year deal.
Right.
But I think 1 or 2 years for a Jimmy Howard, who is an older guy, so it's kind of understood that he's not going to be around forever. I think, again, if you're trying to go for the slow burn with your team, I mean, I would do it if I'm Jim Benning. I mean, what do you really have to lose? If anything, it's a second-round pick in 2 years.
Right. I mean, Demko's put up some good numbers in the AHL. It's just, again, can he translate? Because Jacob Markstrom put up great numbers in the AHL, too.
Jacob Markstrom was supposed to be like the goalie of the future,
right?
Like he was supposed to be like the league measuring stick. Shout out to Laurel. And I mean, I will say he's a very good backup. Maybe not very good. He's a good backup.
Yeah.
Like if the Sharks lost Aaron Dell and it's like, hey, we got Markstrom to play 20 games, I'd be fine with that.
I wouldn't hate it as much. I'd still hate it. Who am I kidding? I don't like him. I've never been a guy. Yeah, I don't know. I think Vancouver, you know what? There's a lot to like. If you're a Canucks fan, I think there's a lot to look forward to in Vancouver, because the thing is, like, you look at the guys that are playing, but there's still some really good players not playing in Vancouver yet.
Yeah, no,
and that's the thing that I really that scares me.
Yeah, like you said, no Demko, no Oli Ulevi. There's one other I'm thinking of, Quentin Hughes,
Right.
who's gonna be disgusting on that blue line, maybe even as early as next year.
That's it. That's what I mean. Like you look at and you still have Jonathan Dolan percolating.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Like there's it's fun because like you look at that team and you look at the guys that aren't playing, and obviously playing in the NHL and actually getting those minutes in is important, but there's a lot. Like I feel like if I'm a Canucks fan, I'm more excited than I would have been if I was an Oilers fan at any point in the last 20 years.
Yeah, agreed. And I will say this, we're talking about how Vancouver's not good and all this stuff. They're up 4-1 on the Flyers right now. Now, it's not hard to score goals on the Flyers, but I mean they're still winning.
We could do a whole show on Philly. Flyers, it sounds like it sounds like Hackstall's days are probably numbered. It seems like he's the next to go.
I heard a rumor that he was going to be fired tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. I've heard they've been really there's a lot of pushing in the front office to try and convince Gwenville to go there. But I don't know.
Yeah, we'll
see. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think Philly would be a terrible destination for Gwenville, honestly. Yeah, they need a goalie still, but look at they've got. I mean, that blue line has got some quality pieces on it, quality pieces coming. And when you look at what he did with the defense in Chicago, I would be if I am Philadelphia, if I'm the Philadelphia Brass, yeah, that's exactly who I want.
Well, and I look at too what Rob says. Does Chuck Fletcher hold a fire sale? Honestly, I could see it. Now, you think the reason why Ron Hextall was fired was because he had the wait and see kind of approach. And that's why Chuck Fletcher was brought in. If you look at Chuck Fletcher's history with the Minnesota Wild, he's known for being very aggressive in that arena. I mean, signing Eric Stahl when everybody thought his career was over, and now that has paid dividends many times over. Trading for Nino Niederreiter, trading for Charlie Coyle.
But here's the thing that would concern me, though, because, he did a lot of good things, but really, what did the Wild, for all his aggressiveness and all his move, what did the Wild ever actually do?
Oh, you're absolutely right. But I just think if you're a Flyers fan who's not happy with where things are, I think a guy like Chuck Fletcher, who has a history of being aggressive and willing to make a change, I think if I were a Flyers fan, I would be very interested in seeing that. Yeah,
no, absolutely. All right, so I don't want to get too far off. Coyotes are the Coyotes. Every time this team thinks it looks like it's going to turn a corner, it feels like the bottom always seems to fall out. This year, I think they've had injury problems consistently. I mean, we discussed, what happens when you miss on a top pick like Dylan Strome, how that can affect your franchise going forward. But I mean, you look at this list. I mean, the injuries are pretty. Damaris Dvorak and Ranto are all out for the season. Hinostroza and Grabner could also be out for the season, although it's not official yet.
I wouldn't be surprised if Grabner needs to have eye surgery.
Right. No, it's a scary situation. Galchenyuk's currently nursing an injury, and this team can't score.
Yeah, I was going to say Galchenyuk also started. Galchenyuk started hot when he came back from his original injury, and then lately he's slowed down. And, it's like we said with the Anaheim Ducks. We said Ryan Getzlaf can't do it all. Clayton Keller sure as hell can't do it all.
No. And maybe sometime in the future, but right now, no.
No, and even then, the guys who are supposed to be your big guys, Ekman Larson. Granted, Ekman Larson is having a better year this year than he did last year, but he's not tearing. He's not being that hyped up offensive defenseman that he probably should be. And even, I've always liked a guy like Derek Stepan, but he's not really scoring a whole lot of points. And
Clayton Keller has 8 goals and that leads the team.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to look for a small victory, the nice thing for them is that their offense is spread out, but the problem is there's not enough of it. And I think too, the big thing is I'm looking at Nick Schmaltz, 9 points in 9 games with the Arizona Coyotes. That's your hill to die on, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, look at and the other problem for them is unlike they're scoring spread out, and they're not obviously getting as much offense as the Ducks are, but they don't have the goaltending either. With
I was going to say, I was
Hill. Yeah, I mean, we've as watching Barracuda, we've seen plenty of Aiden Hill, and he's okay. I mean, he's not a world beater. He's good. He's serviceable.
Yeah, I'm really upset that Antiranta got hurt because I thought after his last 20 games of the season last year, I thought this was going to be a big year for him. So it kind of sucks that he's hurt because I feel like he finally got out of Crawford and Darling's shadows. He got out of Lundqvist's shadow. He's finally that quote unquote top guy in a goaltending perspective, and now he's hurt. And I mean, like you said, Aiden Hill, nice record, nice goals against average, but nice save percentage. But is that sustainable? And if the Coyotes aren't going to score enough goals for him, then eventually it's going to be another year with a 4th overall pick.
Yeah, it could very well be. I mean, and it's unfortunate. I mean, obviously, it's this team that it's what you're scared of. Like, we just praised about how all these players that Vancouver has. The Coyotes are like what you're scared of if you're a team with a bunch of prospects, because the Coyotes have guys in the system. The problem is they continuously don't turn out.
Well, and that's
either they're drafting or they're developing. I don't know, but there's something wrong with that team.
Well, and that's the other thing too. It's kind of like what we said when they made the Strome and Pierlini trade for Schmaltz. Is like, you can have all these prospects and that's great, but at a certain point you have to look at your team and say, okay, we're accumulating prospects, but we need to start winning games.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe at the draft, maybe in the summer, I wouldn't be surprised if we see more trades like Strome and Pierlini for Schmaltz, or even I'm blanking now, Tony DeAngelo and the 7th overall pick for Antiranta and Derek Stepan, like trading these prospects and these draft picks who you've got a lot of for NHL roster players, similar to Buffalo. Like Buffalo picked up a lot of spare parts in the Ryan O'Reilly trade, but those spare parts were NHL roster players.
It's true. Yeah, and that's I don't know. I mean, the Coyotes, they're just such a weird puzzle to me. And I think and the other problem with Arizona is that's really never a settled situation, right? Like there's always that hint of, the team might go back up for sale again, or, oh God, where are we moving to this time? Because my understanding is the team is possibly going up for sale again with the lack of an arena deal.
Well, I believe they did some restructuring because it was Barraway who was the majority owner, and then I mean, this is not recent news, but I think he's since sold some of his shares so that he's just I don't want to say minority owner, but
but he's far less. He's more divested than he was
exactly
before.
And I'm wondering if I think, because I mean, the lack of lack of an arena deal, as you said, if you're eventually the city of Glendale, they're going to turn to the Coyotes and they're going to say, hey, if you want to stay in this building, you're going to have to give us more money. And eventually the Coyotes are just going to keep bleeding.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, and the Coyotes, it was funny to watch them pitch a fit about going to Central when they're going to be in Houston.
Well, and I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this article on Forbes right now.
Okay.
And apparently Barraway, now granted it's from July of this year, so maybe something's changed since then, but according to this, Barraway is looking to sell 49% of the team for $500 million, which is bold.
Good luck. The Coyotes as a whole aren't worth, well, I guess apparently they are, because Seattle's worth $650 million. So
hey yo, Quebec City's not coming. I'm sorry to tell you, Quebec City's not coming.
Oh no, we'll move to Houston or something. They're the fact that they were put in the Central, like the NHL can say no, there's nothing to it. It's just that's the team that had to move. I don't know, man. Houston's been sniffing around a team. I don't think the NHL is going to want to expand any further after the Seattle expansion because I feel like they've got all their markets covered at that point.
Well, and it was funny too because the NHL has a history of doing this. Like, I think it was like 6 months before the Thrashers moved to Winnipeg. Gary Bettman said, "Oh, we're content with all 30 teams and where they're at," and
of course,
evidently that was not the case. And even then, like less than a year before Vegas was announced, he said, "Oh, we have no plans to expand at this time." And it's like, okay, sure, this time, but ask me again in 10 minutes. Like,
right? No, exactly. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. I think that Houston is gonna, if the Coyotes move it to Houston, I don't know what's gonna happen to the Coyotes going forward. They're, and I think that's the unfortunate thing is when you have that kind of cloud constantly hanging over your franchise, it does make it difficult to obviously build things because it's hard to get guys to come there. Guys don't want to come buy a house and then have to buy a new house in Houston in a year. Like, and without that uncertainty, it's hard to get guys that can kind of fill in the pieces as free agents. And because the long gone are the days of, hey, I'm at the end of my career. My name's Brett Hull. I'm going to sign and play a ton of golf. Like those days are long gone.
Well, even Mike Ricci too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like there was a time where guys just, at the end of their career, be like, yeah, the weather's nice, gonna go play some golf. I'll play, and then maybe play some hockey in my spare time. And that was made up a lot of the Coyotes, and that's gone. Wow. All right, so I guess it leaves us with Los Angeles.
I just want to say really quick. So they're showing highlights from Florida Panthers and the Toronto Leafs game. Mm-hmm. Mitch Marner ties the game with 3.5 minutes left in regulation, and then Florida comes back and takes the lead with 3 minutes left, and then less than a minute left, Mitch Marner ties it again.
Mitch Marner's going to get paid.
Yeah, so everybody was talking about William Nylander. No, Mitch Marner. I believe it's the Luke Harper, the professional wrestler, who says Mitch Marner is the straw that stirs the Maple Leafs drink, and that, Vince G, is how this podcast relates to the Leafs. Now we're going to talk about the LA Kings.
One extreme to the other. The LA Kings are bad, and they should feel bad.
Absolutely. I will say, though, I was ready to, go outside Staples Center and start banging a wrench on that statue of Wayne Gretzky. But it sounds like the reason why Kovalchuk was not getting a lot of minutes was because he needed surgery on his foot, and not because they hate him. Which is good because he's literally leading their team in scoring at the time that he got hurt. I don't know. I mean, I don't think the LA Kings are a playoff team, but but their roster, they should be better than 30th. And
should they be though? Like, this team is so slow.
I don't know. I mean, I look at Drew Doughty, who can take over a game by himself. I look at Anze Kopitar, who can take over a game by himself. And, Toffoli once upon a time had 30 goals. Jeff Carter once upon a time had 40 goals, I believe. And, even Jake Muzzin and Alec Martinez are two pretty good defensemen. And it doesn't matter how old he gets. You can never count out Jonathan Quick.
Right.
And I don't know. I have an LA Kings fan that I follow on Twitter, and if his tweets have told me anything, all I can say is play Adrian Kempe at left wing, not center. That's all I've heard.
Yeah, it's interesting because I a lot of the rumors, because you obviously with the roster freeze coming up, there's a lot of rumors, and we'll get into some other teams that are probably don't have a lot nailed to the ground right now. And I feel like LA Kings are probably one of those teams that, they're probably listening on a lot of players that with somewhat movable contracts. Like, I don't think they're going to be taking any calls on Drew Doughty, but well, maybe. But Jonathan Quick, I would not be surprised to see them move on from Quick and just go into a full rebuild.
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point though, you're right. At a certain point, you have to realize you're not content with mediocrity and, sell the farm. I mean, LA sold the farm, like 2009, 2010, and finally got back into the playoffs around that time. And, again, they had stars emerging. Now you look, and I mean, Anderson Dolan is a good piece they have. They've got Gabe Velarde, who's a good piece. But beyond those guys, like, it's there's not a whole lot to be excited about. Again, I think Adrian Kempe is a good little player, but it's like Tomas Hertl with the Sharks. If they keep playing him at center, he's not going to do anything for you.
Right. Yeah, it's rough. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting because I think this year is really because some of the teams that are just not performing, like, I think the prices are probably going to be higher than they should, considering the number of players that I think potentially could be had. And I wonder how much that works against the Kings. Also, when you consider some of those contracts that they've handed out, right?
Well, there was word on the street. I mean, I think there was like a solid week in a row where like Pittsburgh and LA scouts were at each other's games, and everybody was talking about Jake Muzzin, and which like if Jake Muzzin went to the Penguins, that would just be disgusting. But anyways, like, there were these little nuggets of information coming out about guys in the LA Kings who were going to be traded, and it's gone silent. But no, I think you're right. I think, especially with the roster freeze coming up, I think there's going to be pressure to get a deal done, especially, who knows, maybe the roster freeze lifts and the guy you're talking to all of a sudden doesn't want to make that trade. And then, you're SOL kind of thing. I think, too, also a little nice, interesting note that we can all laugh at together. The Penguins played the Kings tonight, and Tanner Pearson, former King, scored a beautiful goal on his former team, and in the process turned Drew Doughty inside out. If you have YouTube, you should go look at it.
That's amazing.
Sorry, go ahead.
AO saying it's good the Sharks didn't go for Kovalchuk. I have to disagree. I think Kovalchuk would have fit in really well with the Sharks. He's a good offensive player, as evidenced by the fact that he's still top of the team in points, and he's been hurt for 2 weeks. And he knows DeBoer's system. DeBoer is on record as saying that Kovalchuk was his best player, Zach Parise aside. And, I think, the salary cap would have been a tough pill to swallow, but, I wouldn't have hated Ilya Kovalchuk and Teal.
I don't know. Even with the way things have gone, I'd still rather have Carlson, and I don't think you had been able to do both. And it wouldn't that be a kick in that, like, not... And I think Sharks fans would have been just angry as hell because you give Ilya Kovalchuk basically the Marleau deal when you didn't give Marleau the Marleau deal. Yeah,
well, Marleau overstayed his welcome, anyways. So.
I'm just throwing that out.
But you're absolutely right. It's it's
what it could have did.
It's just one of those things where it's gonna. You no matter what it is, you can't please everybody. Like the Evander Kane deal is one thing. Everybody was pissed about the Evander Kane deal, and people grew to like it. And
now people are pissed with it again.
Well, yeah, but you look at the Erik Karlsson deal. Like when Erik Karlsson happened, everybody was in love with Erik Karlsson, and now there's so many people I've seen on Twitter. So many people are saying, oh. The Sharks would have been better with DeMello and Rudolph Balsters, and I'm like, okay,
shut up.
Let's slow down here.
Slow down. Yeah, still in DeMello playing with Brendan Dillon would have been just peachy.
I don't know. Is it, maybe DeMello is going to carry Thomas Chabot to a Norris nominee though?
That is exactly what's happening, and don't kid yourself, kids. Thomas Chabot's not good. Still in DeMello carrying him around. Don't kid yourselves. This is what's happening. I hate people.
That's okay.
But the problem is, although Covey on a 1-year deal, but he wanted the 3-year. He wanted the Marleau deal.
Yeah, which I don't know. I maybe not now, but I feel like once upon a time, I feel like Kovalchuk was a better player than Patrick Marleau.
I don't know. Debate for another day.
James Abel, who's the odd man out if Erik Karlsson signs? I've been on record. Let's see what an Eastern Conference team wants for Brent Burns.
Wow, I'm still on the Justin Braun train.
Oh well, yeah. If we're talking practically, sure.
Okay. I don't think Brent Burns is going anywhere. All right. So speaking of, teams that where nothing's really nailed to the floor right now, St. Louis will take your calls on everyone, including Tarasenko. Apparently, I think Jaden Schwartz is the only guy that they won't take calls on, and they don't want to take calls on their kids because, they're rebuilding. So obviously, you're not going to come in and steal a Jordan Kyrou from them.
That's pretty interesting to me because I thought for sure St. Louis was going to be like the team in the Central. Like I don't know. I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I hate David Perron. But I don't think that was a bad signing for them. And even Tyler Bozak, I mean, yeah, it was pricey, but it was what they needed. And then Ryan O'Reilly as well. I love Ryan O'Reilly, but VT, I'm sorry, AO, I don't know who VT is. But I just don't know. St. Louis is in a weird spot. I thought they were expected to be crap last year, and they actually kind of did okay. And then now this year, everybody thinks they're going to lead to the Central, and they can't buy a win. Now, it's been well documented on this podcast that Jake Allen is not good, but he can at least play the part of a goalie on some nights.
Yeah. Tarasenko's on, you have to ask the question, as much as it makes me upset to ask it, but when's the last time Ryan O'Reilly's been on a good team or a successful team?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, even when he was on Colorado, that team was not good.
And I hate to say that because I am in love with this player, and I'm not in the locker room. I don't know shit, but it just, what is the common denominator here? And I you know what? I'm speculating, and you can throw stuff at me on Twitter at IanBlogsHockey. But I don't know. At least it's something that's at least crossed my mind at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
does Ryan O'Reilly crash his truck into everyone else's trucks? Does he crash his truck into the locker room? Or is Tim Hortons not the only place where he's crashing his truck? I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I look at you think about, what he said in Buffalo, last year, how he lost his love for the game and how there's, I don't know if he explicitly said it, but, implied that in Buffalo, there's a culture of losing. And even go back to Colorado, he signed the offer sheet to go to Calgary. Nobody told him he had to do it. He did it on his own accord. So at one point he wanted to leave Colorado. And even though these are things in the past and people mature and grow all that sort of thing, it's still something that lingers in the back of your mind. It's this guy has now been the problem child on his two previous NHL teams at one point. How soon before he's, the problem child here?
Yeah. I mean, look at, and again, that's just me spitballing out loud. I have nothing to base that off of. Ryan O'Reilly is free to punch me in the groin next time he sees me.
He's gonna drive his truck into your house.
Probably, and that's fine. I will. I accept that because, again, I'm just. It's one of those things where it's just it just seems coincidental that he's in St. Louis, and then St. Louis takes a big dive after being in Buffalo, and Buffalo is so much better this year, and Colorado is so much. And
you know what though, Ryan O'Reilly is their leading scorer.
There you go. So. Clearly, I don't know, something's wrong in St. Louis. I don't know if I want to. I kind of like what St. Louis is doing though, because at the same time, it seems like it's a weird team. You would think you would be able to just move some pieces around and it would be better. But I like the fact that the players have kind of lost their equity there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that doesn't happen nearly often enough. Where this is our core and we're going to shuffle pieces around, blah blah blah. With Doug Armstrong, who's got to be fighting for his job at this point. And I think Doug Armstrong's a really smart guy. And I think he would get hired in a heartbeat if St. Louis fired him.
I agree.
I like the fact that the players have lost their equity because they fired how many coaches they've gone through now? They're on their third in 4 seasons.
Yeah, they got rid of Hitchcock. They got rid of Mike Yeo. I feel like they got rid of somebody else too, but maybe I'm wrong. But Yeah, they're like no, like you said though, that team should be way better. I mean, it's you look at a guy like Vladimir, Vladimir Tarasenko. Like this is a guy who over the last 4 years prior to this year has averaged 35 goals.
Yep.
And now this year he's got 9 in 30 games. Like something's not clicking there. Braden Shen, who was a solid player in Philadelphia and lit the world on fire last year, he's not doing bad, but I would say he's just okay. Yeah, exactly. And even Jaden Schwartz, who you said is their only untouchable, he's coming off, 2 really good years in a row, and this year he's just meh.
Right.
And I'm going down the list too. I mean, Tyler Bozak's making a lot of money.
Yep.
He's a third line center, but still for that much money, you should be able to do something else. David Perron, gross, who's somehow still doing things. I just really don't like David Perron. Alex Pietrangelo comes off a Norris-ish year last year.
Right.
This year, not doing a whole lot. Colton Parayko's not doing a whole lot. It's just, I feel like this feels like the year that Tampa Bay missed the playoffs, where just everything is going wrong.
Everything went wrong, yeah.
Everything's going wrong, but they're actually a good team. And so who knows, maybe this time next year, maybe they're first in the league. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. But at the same time, it's concerning.
In it.
Well, you got me there. But I feel like the personnel on this team, they should not be this bad.
They should not be this bad. Sticking with the Central, other teams that I don't think I think don't have as many things nailed to the floor as they used to. The Blackhawks. I mean, the Blackhawks have to do something, right? Like they fired Quenneville, which wasn't a very popular move among Blackhawks fans. The new coach gets booed every time he gets introduced.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God. I did not know that.
They're angry. And who can blame them, right? But at the same time, it's like you got to wonder, if you take contracts out of the picture, because obviously there's some contracts that would be really difficult to move at this point. But you kind of have to wonder, like, who's really untouchable of of your core guys? Who's really untouchable in Chicago at this point? And by by guys, I'm talking your Duncan Keiths, your Jonathan Toews. I think Patrick Kane's untouchable.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't know if Toews is as untouchable. I feel like
I would have traded him 2 years ago.
Who's going to take him at that money though? But again, with taking money aside, I think if someone called and gave them a deal that they couldn't refuse for Toews, they'd probably take it. I think Duncan Keith, they would probably move Duncan Keith at this point. Brent Seabrook, I think anyone would take. Anyone would take any trade to get out from under that contract. But I think that's the thing that makes me wonder is like they've got to do something. Like they have to do. I feel like this is a thing where they've kind of backed themselves in the corner where they have to make a big move now.
Yeah, especially because even though there's not really a whole lot there to be excited about, like that's still, that logo and that name is associated with winning. And if you're the John McDonough, Jack McDonough, whatever his name is, if you're him, if you're that ownership group, you want this culture of winning. And,
right.
I mean,
well, they're going to sign Timmy Panarin next year, and it's going to be all fine.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised either.
But like you look and like I see what they were trying to do with trading Nick Schmaltz. I mean, you get a third overall pick who could still potentially be a top 6 center, and you get Brendan Pierlini, who I like. I like Brendan Pierlini. He's a good little goal scorer. But at the same time, you're trading Nick Schmaltz, who could potentially be your best player in 3 years. As a 22-year-old, you're just passing him up because he's having, an off year, and it's not even really that bad of a year that he's having. And I'm just looking at this list. Like, I mean, Joka Harju has looked really good. That's something to be excited about. But I'm looking at their stats right now. Shout out to Elite Prospects. But aside from Patrick Kane and DeBrincat and Dylan Strome, and Yokoharu. Like everybody else, as far as I'm concerned, I would pack a go bag just in case.
Yeah.
And even Brandon Saad, who they just got back and who is, the savior. Like, I mean, if you can get something for him, do it.
Yeah, because I don't know. I mean, it's bad. Like, and look, at Chicago's had other issues too. Like, it's not like, Corey Crawford's injury, well-documented injury concerns at this point are obviously a big hindrance to them as well, and that doesn't help. That doesn't help an already fading team, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like a big move has to come. It's kind of like, it's a pressure cooker market. It's much like Philly, where I think, again, probably tomorrow morning Dave Haxtell's getting fired just because something has to happen. And I can't help but feel like Chicago is going to move. Chicago's going to move one of the guys that has been there a long time and has their name on that cup a few times. I just can't help but see that they would not do it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's I don't even know. Like with Chicago, like it's one of those things where it's like you like say you're I don't know. I wouldn't say that Stan Bowman is in danger of losing his job, but it's one of those things where it's like if you commit to this rebuild, you're sort of you're looking at this team trying to unpack it, and it's just like, where do I start?
Yeah,
and this team just has a lot of meh to it right now. Like even like I think back to that first year when they had Artem Anisimov,
right?
And he was, he played super well, and he's another guy this year who has had a very meh season. It's just a lot of meh to go around.
It really is, and I don't think like I'm not saying like you're going to trade like a Duncan Keith, for example. Let's say use Duncan Keith as an example, because I think that he could still, Duncan Keith, even at his age and his diminished play, would still draw a pretty sizable return.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like a team's not going to trade for Duncan Keith to be their guy. He's going to be a complementary piece at that point. And, I can't help but think that they would get a decent return for him. But I mean, it's not like it's going to be an immediate fix and they're going to just return to contendership with one trade at the same, on the same token.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's the same thing as LA Kings, where you kind of just have to, strip it down to the bolts and start over. But even then, that culture of winning, it's going to weigh over their head. Every year of this potential rebuild, it's always going to be, we want to win the Stanley Cup.
Right.
We want to do this. And it's like, well, you're not really poised to do that right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like they goofed up. They should have never fired Quenneville, in my opinion. But that's, what's done is done.
They should have never signed Taves to $10.5 million a year.
Well, when you're winning cups and everything's good.
I will say, though, in 2 years, Carolina is going to enjoy Alex DeBrincat.
Patrick Berglund suspended indefinitely by the Sabres for failing to report to the team. Super interesting. I don't know why you wouldn't report. Like, obviously, there's got to be some personal issues going on there because this team has been great.
I saw two. You're right. Buffalo is playing the best they've played in 5 years, and the fact that this is happening, it makes me think there's something there. I saw two really funny tweets though today.
Okay.
One of them was Berglund, I don't want to go to Buffalo. And then Buffalo was like, fine, you're suspended, don't come back. And then Berglund was like, okay. And then I saw another one that said imagine being Patrick Berglund, living in St. Louis for 10 years, and this is the first time that you don't report to your team.
Oh my God. I wish I had some insight to like really throw something on the fire here, but I really don't. I mean, obviously, I hope that he is well.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Obviously, like I hope this isn't a case where we're gonna find out that he's suspended and then he checks into the league substance abuse program or something along those lines. Hopefully he's good. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much more we can say because we really don't know anything. But obviously, when a guy doesn't report to his team, Obviously, there's either an issue in the locker room or it's a personal issue. It's got to be one or the other. And and I hope it's neither. Because why would you be angry at the locker room when you're doing well?
When you're winning games, it's good.
Right. I don't know. Again, I have no idea. I could speculate all day as to why he's not, why he's not reporting, and all of it would be awful and just speculation again. Where I already have Ryan O'Reilly who wants to punch me in the nuts. I don't need Patrick Berglund hunting me down too. Bertuzzo gets a contract for beating up his teammate, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly that's the culture they want in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Where I mean, if teammates out of line, just rough them up a little bit,
rough them up, throw some punches.
But you know what? With how much, and we've talked about this many times before on shows previously, but with how much money bottom pairing defensemen are starting to get, I really like this deal for St. Louis, especially St. Louis is a relatively cap strapped team when you think about it, and. Bertuzzo, when I saw the deal, honestly, I started laughing because I was like, oh my God, they gave Bertuzzo 3 years. But Bertuzzo's a very serviceable defenseman. And with him clocking in at, just a hair over $1 million, like that's a deal that you do every day.
I want to end with this because Alex Ovechkin scored 2 hat tricks back to back.
And he had a goal tonight.
So he has, now he has 600. And my numbers are wrong now.
I believe he's at 6. I believe he's at 635.
I think the goal tonight would put him at 636.
There you go. 20 for those keeping it home. In 32 games played this year, he's got 29 goals, which is a 74 goal pace. That is disgusting. Like
stupid. Like
couldn't he hit 50 and 50?
He could, although I think that's I'd be amazed to see someone in this era hit 50 and 50. Like I just think it'd be a feat, and I hope if anyone can do it, it's Alex Ovechkin. My question is because I think this is a question that we would have laughed at once upon a time, but I'm starting to wonder, is Gretzky's, at least his goal number, I don't think his points number is ever going to be touched by anybody, but his goal number, I don't think it's out of reach for Ovechkin.
Yeah, because how many goals did 894 for Wayne Gretzky?
I believe so. Yeah, somewhere in there.
I mean, I don't know.
It's he's got 33. He's only 33, so he's got time left. He's has the fountain of youth somehow.
Yeah, despite putting away a keg of beer at All-Star fantasy drafts.
And being just like because he kind of plays a reckless game too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's not afraid to hit you.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously he could he's obviously not going to keep this pace up forever, but even again, you obviously have to take into consideration it's probably be a lockout. But even still, I don't think it's such a silly idea as I probably once thought it was. I honestly believe that number would never get touched because of just the era we've come out of. And I'm not so sold in that anymore. Barring no 600 lockouts and a farewell tour in Russia.
I mean, he only needs, by my quick math here, he only needs 258 goals.
Doesn't seem like a lot when you consider the guy puts up 30, 40 goals a season.
Well, and that's the thing, given where his stats currently are right now, he averages 50 goals a season. So theoretically, he could have that record sewed up by the time Seattle joins the league, assuming everything goes well.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Could you imagine? Just like you said, though, 50 and 50 in this era?
That'd be insane.
Yeah.
He's easily, there's no doubt in my mind. When you adjust for error, I mean, Alex Ovechkin, the best goal scorer that's ever played this game.
Yes, absolutely agreed. And I think back to, do you remember 2 seasons ago when he only scored 33 goals and everybody thought that he sucked?
Oh, it was over, man. The career was over.
He only hit 33. Dude, I would love to hit 30 once.
I know. All right, so we're approaching the 2-hour mark, which I kind of expected with the show because we wanted to do the deep dive and stuff. We want to talk about some other things that weren't Sharks related. So I hope that for those that have come to expect that from us a little more often, I hope that you're satisfied. For those of you that have joined recently and are like, where the hell's all the Sharks talk? I apologize. There'll be more coming when there's something to discuss. I just felt like this week, with everything going on and with where the Sharks are at, there's not really a whole lot to say about them right now. Like it's a big wait and see holding pattern with them. I feel like, again, we could, oh, they won 3 games. Is DeBoer suddenly safe? Well, I think DeBoer is probably safer than he should be anyway. We could belabor that show after show, but I just, where's the fun in that?
Yeah, I feel like too, the Sharks have, the last week or so, the Sharks have been just going about their business, and so I feel like you said, there isn't really a whole lot to talk about. And Laurel saying in the chat too, talking about Berglund, that quote, from my knowledge to the medical staff, he was ill, which is what Phil Housley said. And I actually saw a tweet earlier today from John Vogel, who said that Berglund the last few games was sick, and sick is in quotation marks. So hopefully it's nothing major, but it's definitely cause for concern.
That's where I'm kind of like, that's why I kind of like brought up this, like, is this going to be a case where we see him like check into like the substance abuse program or something?
On a more positive note, the Barracuda just went up 3-2.
Woohoo! Definitely. I know we didn't really get much Barracuda talk today, well, any Barracuda talk other than kind of just keeping track of the game. I'm not going to lie. I've had trouble keeping up with the Sharks, and I am so out of the loop with the Barracuda right now, and I'm going to get back in and try and get all my stuff sorted out. But right now it's just like, we could talk Barracuda, but honestly, I just be looking at numbers and talking out of my rear end. And you guys deserve better than that, especially when you've sat here for 2 hours listening to me ramble. So, and Jerk to ramble as well. So, I apologize for the lack of Barracuda coverage, but I just, again, I don't want to, I don't want to be fake. I don't want to pretend I have knowledge on a topic that I don't, and fake it. And I think it's obvious when people fake stuff like that. So I would rather not discuss it than discuss it poorly or terribly in possible case. Jerk, final thoughts before we get out of here.
So final thoughts. I guess nobody is harassing me for being an alleged Penguins fan anymore. I think that's been shifted to Flames. So I will say this: I am not a Calgary Flames fan. I just really like their third jersey. You know what? The NHL is very fun to watch this year. We're seeing a lot of high-scoring games. You're seeing a lot of games where teams are coming back. And you're seeing a lot of interesting little things to develop, like we were talking about Alex Ovechkin, talking about all this other kind of stuff. And it makes for more interesting podcasts, if you ask me. And obviously you don't want to miss out on those podcasts. I mean, who would, right?
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah, you're going to want to follow me on Twitter at @hockey_jerk, obviously, because, all my thoughts and feelings and opinions are just going to be vomited onto your timeline on a, I would say daily basis, and you definitely don't want to miss out on that. But, the show Twitter, I always forget the @ is it Teal Tinted Pod?
It is.
@Teal Tinted Pod on Twitter. Anytime we're going to go live, whether it's a planned show or whether we're bored and like, hey, let's go live, it's going to be posted there. And that's where you're going to want to go to know when we're recording next. Or I guess streaming. I don't know. The internet is hard.
Doing the internet.
Yeah.
Doing internet things.
That's where you want to be. And words. I don't know. I haven't done a podcast for like 3 weeks, so I feel like I'm out of whack. Back to you.
Yeah. So, and like you said, obviously subscribe, tell 2 friends, and all that fun stuff. Other than that, obviously we're entering the holiday season, so I don't know what that's going to do to our schedule going forward. But again, follow the Twitter, and we'll let you know when we're going to do shows, and or again, one of us might just hijack the channel and ramble by ourselves for 20 minutes. Who knows? And I said,
I was going to say, I'm surprised you think we could only last 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Also, be sure to follow our good friend Kevin Lacey at Kevin Lacey 22, who couldn't be with us tonight, but hopefully will be back with us on our next adventure. Until then, have a good night. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your support. Have a good night.